Well, I think that we are all set to get started and on our weekly update. And of course, we do these every other week to be able to give you a sense of what's happening with the farm, what's going on with Kvarøy Arctic. And I cannot tell you how excited I am to have Casey Korn join me today from Fulton Fish Market. We have a lot of awesome stuff to cover. I am honored to meet you, honored to work with you. Cannot tell you how excited I am that you're part of our fishy business, and really excited about all of the things that are happening at Fulton Fish Market. So I sort of feel like we have to start in a place that's, how did you get here and how did Fulton Fish Market make this pivot to online? Because it's such a dynamic thing to get started and not an easy undertaking.
It's not. And thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and excited to meet you as well in person, sort of.
For now, this is what the best we can do, right?
Exactly. So yeah, FultonFishMarket.com has a really fascinating history. We actually are one of the oldest fish markets in the US, and we're actually the world's second largest fish market behind Tokyo's market. So we're a pretty big deal. Yeah. Many people probably know the name Fulton Fish Market. We were in South Street Seaport since 1822. But then when the market moved up to the Bronx in 2005, there really was an opportunity to do something new. And so in 2014, we launched FultonFishMarket.com, which is who I am representing. And we basically have taken our legendary fish market online and have given access to all of America, what only New Yorkers basically could get up until 2014. So we literally have everything from, salmon from the Arctic in Iceland to live sea urchin from Santa Barbara to, caviar that's being sold in Michelin restaurants. So it's really given Americans access to seafood in a way that they've never had it before.
And it is such an important platform, isn't it? Because now definitely accelerated because of these times that we're in. But even before that, the idea that this generation, millennials and those that are coming after, really want access to beautiful, sustainable food, but don't want to have to go out and get it. They want it to come straight to their door. And that is a problem that you're solving, because there aren't a lot of them that are able to access the market and have the breadth of offerings that you do.
Exactly. I mean, as a millennial myself, and I feel like I can speak for at least my generation and definitely the younger generation, that we're sort of the generation of Amazon and convenience and the internet, and have never been able to have access to seafood in this sort of way before. So it's unfortunately the positive for us, at least from a global pandemic, is having a lot of Americans who were previously in sort of seafood deserts, like landlocked, where you're sort of told to avoid fish maybe because you're so far from the sea, that here we are filling this gap that really provides seafood to people who've never had access to it before. And now, unfortunately, with the pandemic, have realized, oh, I can have access to this because it's online.
And I think there's been so much information out there about fish and seafood during this time. Of course, the pillar here is that 75% of fish and seafood was eaten out in restaurants. And we've heard all day long about why, we're afraid to cook it and it makes the house stink and all of these things. And those of us like you that have been in this for so long know that we've been like trying to sort of chip away at that narrative. And then all of a sudden this pandemic hits and people are looking for healthy, sustainable protein to help them fight off what's happening out there in the world. And all of a sudden there is Fulton Fish, market.com that's been really set up and ready to help support what consumers want, where they want it.
Exactly. And we really adapted our offerings to fit that need. So we launched seafood bundles that we'd never done before, that give people an easy way to buy a number of things and then freeze it for the future when we are in a time of uncertainty. It's been a really, I know, sort of like relief to a lot of people to be able to at least know that like we're shipping, you will get your seafood from us, it will come fresh, you can pick your date, and like, here you go, here's your healthy, sustainable seafood.
Well, and for me, and you know this, I'm an advocate of sustainably harvested and reared seafood. It's part of what I do beyond what beyond just Kvarøy Arctic, and building that pantry of items in your freezer, really with best in class freezing techniques, proves in your model, doesn't it, that you can pull something from your freezer pantry and have delicious seafood that's not like the frozen seafood of old.
Exactly. And I was on your webinar with Andrew Zimmern the other day, and he mentioned, you know, one of the things that he always says is seafood is quick and easy, and it has this sort of reputation of being complicated and too fussy and smelling up the house, but you can make a dinner in like 2.5 seconds with fish, and especially with products that are as high quality and sustainable as Kvarøy Arctic. I mean, it's basically is like, here, you can't screw it up.
And it's something that the entire family will enjoy. And then let's just layer in all of those things like, you know, the American Heart Association recommends, you know, 4 servings of fish and seafood a week. And you've got Kvarøy Arctic where you can get all of your omega-3s in one serving.
Portion for the whole week.
What is happening?
Outrageous.
I know. Well, and so it's kind of been this, you know, duh. Of course, we should be eating more fish and seafood. But what I love is you at fultonfishmarket.com make it easy for us, because I think people have been intimidated by the fish and seafood case in general. Is that fair?
I think so. You know, it's interesting because when I joined the team, one of the reasons that I love fultonfishmarket.com is the mission to bring seafood to everyone, to make it accessible, to make it, you know, not intimidating. And they told me that, you know, most Americans, you know, never eat seafood during the week. And I was like, how is that possible? I ate seafood like multiple times a week growing up, but I'm from LA. I also was raised in a mostly pescatarian family. So my experience is totally skewed.
Yep.
Being said, everyone should be able to have access to phenomenal seafood and to an authority that makes it easy. So to that extent, we have recipes on our site. We do interviews with chefs. We're putting together recipe videos and any inspiration you might need. You know, our team is here to help you. If you've never cooked fish before, give us a call. We'll like walk you through it.
I know, I love that. But the other thing too is that you take the guesswork out of the sourcing, because is it true or not that when one of us is at the grocery store, you know, chicken is all chicken, whether it's natural, whether it's organic, whether it's commodity, I know what a chicken is going to taste like.
Yes.
And when I look at the beef section, beef is going to be beef, whether it's this type of steak or that. I mean, it's very familiar. But when I get in front of that fish and seafood case, I kind of have that same mindset. Like if all it was filled with salmon, well, we would love that at Kvarøy Arctic. But the reality is that it's filled with dozens of items that maybe I'm less familiar with. And does it make the choice harder?
I think it does. I think, and there is totally a connection with, like, I would say beef, especially where there's all these different cuts and you're not necessarily sure what cut is good for what dish.
Right.
That there's a huge space for education in the seafood industry to, I don't know if we maybe go into these bigger markets and really educate their seafood departments so that they can be knowledgeable and say, you know, look, everyone recognizes salmon. It's orange and beautiful. Everyone recognizes tuna because it's red. But then you get into the white fishes and people are like, I don't know, like, is it tilapia?
Mm-hmm.
And we want people to be able to make informed decisions. So our website has tons of information on it, from health information, what vitamins you're getting in each fish, to cooking tips, to flavor profiles, to fun facts. I mean, it really is a one-stop shop of information and to help you make an educated seafood buy.
Well, and what I love too is that you've got this massive team, and you should talk about this for a second, that are digging into every element of the sourcing. So all the way through. So I want to preface it with, you've got this team that's really sourcing best in class fish and seafood. Okay, check the box. We could say there are other retailers and other of your local fishmonger that's doing the same thing. But it's the information and the transparency that you're bringing that's different, because where do you go where you see the farm name in the fish case?
You don't.
Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So, one of our things is one of the programs I really love is the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch. They are an unbelievable resource for anyone to use if you want to make sure, which you should, make sure that you're getting sustainable seafood. Head to that website and literally type in anything and you'll know. And we rely heavily on resources like that and NOAA to focus on providing the most sustainable seafood we can. So when we bring in new products, like when we started working with Kvarøy Arctic, a big question is, are you sustainable? It's like the first question we ask. If you're not sustainable, we're not going to bring you in. I mean, it is absolutely our duty as the world's second largest fish market to be the leaders in sustainability. There's just no question about that.
Well, and that voice politically and actively and with intention every single day through such a impactful platform. I mean, look at digital media. Look at how many people you reach. Give everyone a sense of that.
Yeah, so especially with the pandemic and people really focusing their energies online over the past few months, it's given us an opportunity to be a leading voice. And, we've been sending out seafood to people all over the country who have never had access to the seafood before. And we've seen, especially over the past few months, that voting with your money is possibly the most impactful way to vote in America. I mean, look what just happened with Goya. And, that's something that we feel is our responsibility, that if, we present to you 9 options for salmon and 8 of them aren't sustainable, that's us dropping the ball for sure. So for us, this is a time of reckoning as well. We are an old company, so we definitely still have some products that we've been selling for decades that probably aren't the most sustainable option. So we're taking this time to really reassess and see, how do we vote with our dollar as well? We're not going to give our money to, unsustainable farmed fisheries that are using bad practices. We just can't do that anymore. And the convenience of price is not an excuse anymore as well.
No, and that is such an important thing to note. Seafood can be accessible and a great price and sustainable and meet the market where it is. It's not that sustainability is only available to those who can afford the most expensive products. That's not sustainable at scale.
It's not. And if you talk about the organic industry as well, it's totally a cautionary tale of the power of marketing sort of getting ahead of the actual practices. So for us, it's really important. I mean, I can go into organic seafood and all of that for ages, but
next time.
We don't have organic seafood in the United States, but what we do have is sustainable seafood. And that's more impactful because it's regenerative. It's not having an impact on the environment. It's all of these things that by just buying sustainable seafood, you are doing a great thing for the planet.
Well, and what I love is that sustainability can be from places that are close by. So supporting local fishers, local farmers, as you said, local seaweeds, and all of these things that are close by the market, right? Within that 150 to 200 mile radius. And then there are some of those that are best in class, that are doing things that are sustainable for all levels, that are a little bit further away. And when you start to balance all those things out, you end up with this platform of sustainability, because the answer is all different inputs, right? It's not one single way of doing something. And the thing I love about Mike and Julia and Emily and you and the entire team, Anthony, everyone, is that you're really setting your own standards. Yes, you're using Seafood Watch as a benchmark, ASC, Global Gap, MSC, all of these. But when you find one that you've done the deep dive in, you'll bring that on board, because even all of those standards are only as good, right, as the lens they can put on it.
Exactly. And that's one reason that we loved working, we love working with you and the Kvarøy team, is that the story is there. The 3 generations in this family,
it's insane, right?
It's amazing. And you start thinking about them and you're like, why wouldn't I just like them. Like,
Yes.
I want to buy.
I said I searched my whole life to find this farmer because I mean they are, for those that are tuning in, and many of you know us and we do these updates, but the oldest finfish farm that's still family owned in the world. And you know, Casey, that narrative, we know most of these farms came up through big companies, through access that they wanted to have through from commoditization, this globalization of farm seafood generated primarily out of China originally. And a lot of companies came in and wanted to build an economy around that. And then you had these guys that were doing it since 1976, you know, first water in the water in 72, and knowing why, because their wild stocks were being depleted. And they felt like as the salmon go, we go. And we cannot have that happen.
And that's one of the things that I also find really fascinating about Kvarøy Arctic is listening to Alfgaran talk about the impact and the regulations on the wild seafood industry that
Yes.
farmed seafood has to take into account is fascinating. And what Kvarøy does to mitigate the issue of, you know, how do you not affect the wild seafood industry while still like trying to produce the most amazing sustainable seafood you can is unbelievable. I mean, it's really a huge effort across the board.
And how do you feel your customers, where that provenance and that storytelling meets what then is their commitment through the lens of Fulton, but also a place where we can really tell our story, which we've talked about on menu and in other fish and seafood cases is so difficult. What is that differentiator? And is that resonating with your customer base? Are you finding that that's working?
It is, you know, there's definitely been over the past, I'd say like decade, a real return in the food industry as a whole, both consumers and chefs and buyers and everyone, to create a much deeper connection between people and where their food comes from. And I think that's really important just on the whole. I mean, talking about sustainability and the impact that we as people have on the world, that having a deeper connection to where your food comes from and how it gets to you is really important. And what we found is that our customers would be perfectly happy just like clicking order, but
Right.
they find a deeper connection to us because we are giving them a story. And you don't just keep going back to like the same store over and over because it's convenient. You do it because you like the people, because you know, there's always more reasons than just quick, easy, slap, dash, order, deliver, whatever. You know, having a deeper connection makes you more engaged, makes you want to try something new, makes you want to maybe spend a little more money or not, and ask, you know, get in touch with us and say whatever you want. It creates a completely different shopping experience, really.
Well, and that level of trust. You're setting up a platform of trust so that I'm willing to try these new things, maybe something I haven't tried based upon a recommendation. And then the other thing is, of course, I always say that everything from a fisher to a farmer on the water, it's this chain of well-being. And so this chain of well-being, this, you know, this unbreakable permanent bond from the water all the way to my home, coming into my home and being on my plate, I have to know that every single part of that is being taken care of. And I feel like when this fish comes into Fulton, you know, into Fulton Fish Market, we know that all of the integrity, the trust is going to also be taken care of at that point in the supply chain. And then to get it out to consumers in a way that's the best, that's still cold, that's the best cut of fish. You know, there's none of this murkiness. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's really amazing. You know, we give our customers the ability to really customize their order. If you want, you know, this specific part of the salmon, we'll get that for you. You know, this should be like going into the best fishmonger you've ever gone into, where you know the guy because he's been your family fishmonger for 8 generations and he knows what you like. Like, we want to be that for you.
Yeah. And a lot of us don't have that connection to our ingredients anymore, do we?
We don't, which is sad. And I, you know, really love the buy local movements. And when you're not buying local, it's important to find sustainability where you can. And that's what I love about companies like Kvarøy is that, like, yeah, you're not local, But that's okay, because the steps that you're taking to make a sustainable product outweigh the fact that it's not local, like by
Right.
far.
Right. Well, and if we didn't, we're so like, I always say, our consumption is like a bowl of popcorn, right? You sit there with it in the middle of the table. You say you're only going to take a few bites of it, but before you know it, the whole bowl is gone. And I firmly believe that had we not had some of these imports, and we can have a balance, certainly more balance in what is locally reared and harvested, and we know that there are a lot of efforts to be able to grow aquaculture and better management of fisheries in the United States, but we would have eaten the whole bowl of popcorn. So Kvarøy Arctic plays a role in protecting that from our hands eating all of it in Alaska and other places, right?
Absolutely. And especially since the EU does have organic regulations and does, sort of go a step beyond what America does as far as seafood regulation, that it makes way more sense to be working with companies that have a connection to their land and their water, that care about their product. That's also something that, everyone goes, well, I care, but you can tell when people don't. And you can tell when you taste Kvarøy, you're like, this is it. This is what love tastes like.
Well, and that's the thing. So let's talk about that a little bit, because if you've done everything right, the right way, then we get to have fun on the plate and create different dishes with it. And so what is it about Kvarøy Arctic that you found, like when you tasted it, that you were so connected with that love? Now, part of it is you're coming into it with the story, so that's helpful. But what about those Arctic waters, that merwa, we talk about that merwa a lot. And I mean, we know that we borrowed it from the oyster industry and certainly built upon the wine industry. But what was it about that when you first tasted it?
Yeah. So, Americans are very used to eating Alaskan salmon and domestic wild salmon. And then we also have a bit of like New Zealand, which is like this bold in your face salmon flavor, which I love too. But Kvarøy, what I find unbelievable about the flavor is, you guys talk about the deep fjord currents and the icy waters and
you hear the music.
And it's pure. And it is like, that's what you taste in Kvarøy salmon. It's clean. It's a little bit milder than like that bold in your face salmon, which makes it a lot more accessible. If you're a person who's like, no, I tried salmon, I didn't like it, try Kvarøy, because it's not the same. It's a completely different eating experience. It feels like it's clean. It tastes clean and delicious, and just like is a like clean slate for all of your salmon creativity.
And you don't get, one of the things about certainly poorly reared salmon as well is you get this aftertaste. So all of those off aromas and that aftertaste, we were talking about how we did like a master sommelier style tasting. And the thing that everybody kept talking about was this bright, clean palate that you had after.
It's amazing. I mean, when we did our like tasting at Fulton Fish Market, I did it a few ways, just straight pan sear, and then we added some other butters and flavors to it, and it just kept getting better. Like it was perfect, just salt in a little olive oil and butter, pan seared, the perfect piece of salmon. And then you start adding flavors to it, and you're just like, there's nothing the salmon can't do.
Yeah, I mean, that was the crazy thing to me too, was that if you wanted to do it as a little ceviche or a poke, and you got that firm frozen fish, and you were able to just slice and chop it up and marinate it and have it that way, all the way through to something that was in papillote, that was steamed, or even something that was a little bit more robust, like those skewers, right? That great skewer recipe where it's like fired and really like charred up, and here it all seems to carry.
Yeah. And, just as far as the frozen and eating it raw as well, that's something that for me is a really big selling point on the Kvarøy, is that, we don't do it. We don't yet have a sushi or sashimi program, but for me as a huge sushi eater, I want to know that my fish is safe to eat raw. Yeah. And with Kvarøy, you like never have to worry about that. You can even buy it frozen and eat it raw, because it's so high quality and it's so clean that there's no way that between it coming out of the water and going into your mouth, that something bad's going to happen. There's so much accountability through every stage that it's like the one fish where you're just like, great, like whatever you want.
That's right. I mean, literally, let them eat fish, right? Yeah, but the thing that I think is so important too is that in this COVID era, sustainability is going to denote safety.
Yes.
And so every layer of this sustainable mandate that you have creates this trust of safety, I think. And people know that they're going to be safe eating it, safe bringing this into their homes, safe feeding it to their families.
Exactly. And we also, are pretty all about, like safe practices in your own home as well, which if you need any help with like, how do I know my salmon's cooked? Like, again, reach out to us. We'll help you with any of your fish needs because we want to take the intimidation out of eating seafood.
And then the other thing is health, right? And what a lot of people don't know is that the health in the fish is in the fat.
Yes.
And that's what people get when they get their omega-3s. And, we were talking about this American Heart Association red check seal, but it's one of those things where it really is important. It's not like steak or chicken where you're cutting away that layer of yellow fat. And you and I as chefs might say, oh, and by the way, cook it on there so that it doesn't dry out. But like with fish, like, can you imagine a little salmon belly tartare that's just that's like an omega-3 bomb right there when it's Kvarøy Arctic.
Oh, of course. And I mean, that's one of the things too, is that having this story from Kvarøy about what the health aspects is and why, I hope sets a standard for companies to have to show, this is what your health benefits are when you eat our product, or like, then maybe we'll know, don't eat that product because they're not saying anything.
Well, and that's been the misnomer for years. And it's a narrative that the salmon industry really created, right? The lower those feeder fish were, the amounts that we put into the feed, the less omega-3s were in the salmon. And salmon have to eat in the wild lots of anchovies and sardines and herring and everything to get those omega-3s. They don't produce them on their own. And so that was really the unique innovation. I mean, as good farmers, we can use innovation to then bring a salmon to market that has the most long chain omega-3s in the industry as well as wild. And I agree with you. I think that all of us have to take this as an example. And as old school, as some of these organizations feel, like the American Heart Association and looking at the food pyramid and all of these things, we have to be thinking about that in the practices we put into place. And we all, as farmers, should be looking at that and hitting that standard. There's no doubt.
Absolutely. And, what's happened in the States as far as regulation, both on seafood and the produce livestock side, is just a product, unfortunately, of commoditization. And it's really important that the people who can and want to produce sustainable, organic, best for the environment, best for the consumer products, we need to be always, always supporting them.
That's right. Well, and we look at these chefs like Dan Barber and others, and they've been teaching us this and talking about this. And then at the end of the day, it comes down to the flavor, dummy, because it will taste better.
It just tastes better. And that's something that, has been proven over and over and over again in blind tests and all these things is, I mean, like there was a joke when I went to school in Connecticut, since I'm from LA originally, and I bought a tomato and I opened it up and it was white. And I was like, this isn't even a tomato. And that's the same thing, is that so much of America is used to this overly farmed or not sustainable, which means it's not that high quality fish that, of course, you maybe don't like fish because you've never eaten real fish.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And there are so many things like frozen being the new fresh, like we talked about. And these, remember that as you have a new generation of an iPhone, or as your computer gets better, or as your farmer is managing water better on land, so too is what we're doing in the sea as this best in class farmer, that is all going to trickle down into what is going to end up on the plate. So you have to tell everyone, I know we have a lot of really exciting things coming up with Kvarøy, which I'm so excited about, right? I mean, from the super super summer campaign around superfoods to all of these great recipes, the burgers and the dogs.
Burgers and the
Which we're
dogs.
so excited about you having. But how do we get more information? How can we look to all of this? How can we reach you? Before we wrap up, let's call out all of that so we can inundate your inbox.
Yes, so fultonfishmarket.com is where you go to place all your fish and seafood orders. We've got you for everything, literally everything. And if you don't see it, just ask. We will ship it to you on ice in as soon as you want it, as late as you want it. It comes perfect. I've ordered myself a number of times. If you want to know more about me, I'm on Instagram at Casey_corn, and I'm always posting fish and other food content. But yeah, we are really excited for all of this stuff. I have been thinking about making pigs in a blanket with the salmon dogs lately.
Yay! Oh my gosh. Somebody told me I should do corn dogs, which I'm like, yes, let's do badass old school corn dogs.
Yes. Okay.
Right?
I'll work on that with you. And then, yeah, I mean, it's such a great fish that like the world is, I mean, you can't even say the world is your oyster. The world is your salmon, because
the world is our salmon. And with FultonFishMarket.com and with you and the team, lots of love. Have a great rest of the day. I know we're going to be talking often, and I'm from LA too.
Woohoo!
There you go. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye now.